A crowd of 1,500 was seconds from tearing itself apart, until one impossible calm swept through them all. And the strangest part? It started with a single human choosing not to run. So tell me, where are you watching from? And will you subscribe to help this channel grow? Let's begin. Sarah arrived 20 minutes early, as always. The lecture hall was still empty, which meant she could choose her spot without anyone watching. She moved along the windowed wall, past rows of connected desks, until she reached the back corner, far from the door, far from the professor's podium, far from everyone. She pulled her sleeves down over her wrists and set her bag on the chair beside her. A small barrier. People understood barriers. The blocker behind her ear gave a soft pulse, confirming it was active. 2 years of medication, 6 months of training, and one piece of Illyri tech smaller than a fingernail, all to keep the echo field buried where it belonged. Denver, 2165. Earth had been in contact with alien species for 8 years now. No wars, no invasions, just treaties, temporary visas, and humans trying very hard to act normal about sharing classrooms with people who didn't breathe quite the same air. The Interspecies Cultural Foundations class was the university's flagship integration program. On paper, it was about building bridges. In practice, it was a lottery of awkward eye contact, and students filming each other for their channels. Sarah opened her tablet and pretended to review notes she'd already memorized. Other students began filtering in. Laughter, overlapping conversations, the smell of coffee and synthetic breakfast bars. She kept her eyes down. A girl with red hair sat 3 rows ahead, glancing back once before whispering to her friend. Monica Reyes. Sarah had learned to recognize the ones who looked twice. Monica's brother had died in an industrial accident involving miscalibrated alien tech. She never said anything directly, but her shoulders tensed whenever Sarah walked past. The rows around Sarah remained empty. Students filled in from the front, from the sides, avoiding her corner like there was a sign she couldn't see. It was fine. Safer this way. The professor was shuffling papers at the front when the door banged open. A guy stumbled in, backpack half open, looking like he'd sprinted from the other side of campus. Ethan Cole. She'd seen him before, always rushing, always apologizing to someone. He scanned the room, realized every seat was taken, then spotted the empty row by the window. He didn't hesitate, just walked over and dropped his bag on the floor beside her desk. Half the room looked up. Someone whispered loud enough to Carrie. "Dude, that's the alien section." Ethan pulled out a battered notebook and a pen that looked like it had survived a war. "If anyone complains," he muttered, mostly to himself, "I'll just say I got lost." He glanced at her for half a second. Tired eyes, brown hair that needed a cut, the kind of face that had seen too many late shifts. "Hey, if I'm crowding your space or whatever, just say so." Sarah's heart kicked against her ribs. The echo field stirred, a low hum beneath her skin. "No," she managed, barely audible. "It's better this way." Better? No one ever said it was better to sit near her. Ethan just nodded and opened his notebook. Cool. The professor began the lecture, something about nonverbal communication across species. Sarah tried to focus, but she could feel the subtle shift in the room, the usual low buzz of tension, the constant hum of nerves and judgment, and too many people in one space, except around their row. Around them it felt quieter. The echo field was still there. She could feel it, always present, always hungry for emotion to reflect and amplify. But instead of feeding on the room's anxiety, it seemed to settle, focus, on him, on the guy who sat down without asking permission from her fear. The professor's voice cut through her thoughts. "For your first assignment, you'll be working in pairs. Turn to the person next to you." Sarah's stomach dropped. Ethan looked over, gave a small shrug. "Guess we're stuck together." She tried to answer. Her throat closed. The echo field pulsed once, gentle as a heartbeat, and for the first time in 2 years, it didn't feel like a warning. 3 weeks in, and Ethan still sat in the same spot. Sarah had expected him to drift away, find friends in the front rows, realize sitting next to the nervous alien wasn't worth the social cost. But every Tuesday and Thursday, he showed up, usually late, always ending up beside her. He didn't ask questions, didn't try to force conversation, just existed in the space next to her like it was the most normal thing in the world. When her translator glitched during a lecture about gesture interpretation, he slid his tablet over without a word. Notes already open. When someone's phone alarm went off and made her flinch, he turned slightly, a subtle wall between her and the noise. Small things, forgettable things. Except she remembered all of them. The assignments piled up. Group discussions, partner presentations, role-playing exercises that made her want to sink through the floor. But with Ethan, it was different. He had a way of making everything feel less like a performance. "Okay, so this question about personal space customs," he said one afternoon, squinting at the assignment sheet. "I'm supposed to ask how close is too close in your culture. But that feels like the kind of thing that'll sound creepy no matter how I phrase it." Sierra almost smiled. "We measure distance in breath counts. 3 full breaths is comfortable for strangers." "Breath counts, that's actually pretty smart." He leaned back in his chair. "Humans just wing it and hope we're not being weird." "You're not?" He glanced over. "Not what?" "Being weird." His expression softened. "Good to know." Dr. Hannah Park walked through the rows, tablet in hand, monitoring the ambient stress levels the university tracked for integration success metrics. She paused near their section, frowned at her screen, then moved on. Sierra noticed it before Hannah did. During debates, when voices rose and tension crackled through the room, their corner stayed calm, not silent but measured. People who sat near them stopped mid-argument to take breaths they didn't realize they needed. The echo field was active. She could feel it, a constant presence beneath her skin, but it wasn't amplifying the room's anxiety. It was focusing on Ethan's steady heartbeat, his deliberate calm, the way he approached every tense moment with the same quiet thought. Don't make it worse. Try to help. Hold steady for whoever needs it. The field was taking that intention and spreading it outward like ripples in still water. She should have been terrified. Should have reported it to Dr. Park, increased her blocker dosage, switched seats. But for the first time since the incident on her homeworld, the echo field didn't feel like a weapon waiting to misfire. It felt like it was learning. Across the room, Jace Miller had his phone angled toward their row, pretending to check messages while his camera app recorded. He had a moderately successful channel called Mixed Campus Life, full of edited clips that made alien students look either fascinating or unsettling, depending on what got more views. He'd noticed Sierra weeks ago, the Illyri who always sat alone, who flinched at loud noises, who looked like she was one bad moment away from vanishing entirely. Content gold. But now there was the human guy, the one who sat next to her like it wasn't a statement. Jace scrolled through his footage, trying to find an angle. Unlikely friendship? No, too soft. Human befriends isolated alien? Maybe. The student everyone avoids? He'd figure it out. The professor's voice cut through the room's low buzz. Next week we'll be hosting a mandatory attendance event for the Interspecies Coexistence Week. Ambassador Tilen will speak in the main auditorium. This is a requirement for all students on cultural exchange visas. Sierra's hands went cold. Mandatory, auditorium, hundreds of people. Ethan noticed her stillness. "You okay?" She nodded automatically. "Fine." She wasn't fine. The main auditorium sat 1,200 people, 1,200 heartbeats, 1,200 sources of nervous energy, all packed into one space with terrible acoustics and exits that would bottleneck if anyone panicked. Her blocker could handle a classroom. Maybe. But 1,200 people. She'd sworn she'd never put herself in that situation again. Ethan was still looking at her, that quiet concern in his eyes. "If you want," he said carefully, "we could sit near an exit." You know, in case the ambassador's boring and we need to fake a bathroom emergency. It wasn't much, just an offer, a small kindness. But the echo field pulsed warm and steady, and Sayara realized something that should have scared her more than it did. Around him, she almost felt safe. The memory came at night, when Sayara couldn't outrun it. She was 14 again, standing in the plaza outside her school. A peaceful protest about water rights had turned into a crowd of 300 people, and she'd been caught in the middle on her way home. At first it was fine, chanting, signs, organized energy. Then security arrived. Someone shoved back. A child started crying, and Sayara felt it. Every spike of fear, every thread of anger, every person's rising panic feeding into her skin like voltage she couldn't ground. The echo field woke up. It didn't ask permission. It just took every ounce of that anxiety and threw it back at the crowd, amplified 100-fold. Rational thought vanished. 300 people moved as one terrified organism, crushing toward the exits. 17 people were injured in the stampede. A woman broke her arm. A man had a heart episode. No one died. But Sayara learned what she was that day: dangerous. She touched the blocker behind her ear, a nervous habit. The device had been grafted on the day she turned 16, along with a list of rules printed in clinical Illyri script. Avoid groups larger than 50. Avoid physical contact with species you haven't been trained to read. If you feel the echo field activate, remove yourself immediately. If an incident occurs, you will be recalled for permanent containment therapy. Containment therapy, a polite phrase for a small room and enough medication to make sure she never felt anything again. The university library was nearly empty on Friday afternoon. Sarah had claimed a corner desk, trying to focus on an essay about communication breakdowns. The words kept blurring. "Hey!" She jumped. Ethan stood there, 2 coffee cups in hand, looking apologetic. "Sorry, didn't mean to sneak up." He set 1 cup near her. "You look like you could use caffeine. Or, do Illyri drink coffee? I probably should have asked first." "We do." She wrapped her hands around the cup's warmth. "Thank you." He sat across from her, pulling out his own assignment. For a few minutes they worked in comfortable silence. Then he said quietly, "You don't have to go to the auditorium thing." She looked up. "It's mandatory." "So is a lot of stuff. Doesn't mean it's right." He tapped his pen against the table. "I worked in an auto shop for 6 years. We had mandatory safety briefings in this tiny room with 40 guys and no ventilation. I had a panic attack halfway through the first one. Manager told me I'd get used to it." "Did you?" "No. I just learned which exits were closest and stood near them." He met her eyes. "If something makes you that scared, there's usually a reason." Sayara's throat tightened. She wanted to tell him, wanted to explain about the field, the incident, the rules carved into her life like scars. But the words wouldn't come. Across the library, Monica Reyes was at the printer, collecting pages for her own assignment. She glanced toward their table, something unreadable crossing her face. Later, when Ethan left to catch his next class, Monica approached. "Can I ask you something?" She didn't sit, just stood there, arms crossed. "Do you actually want to be here? On Earth, I mean?" Sayara blinked. Yes? "Because my brother wanted to work with alien tech. Thought it was the future. He was careful, followed every protocol." Monica's voice stayed level, but her hands were shaking. "The equipment failed anyway. Wrong calibration for Earth's gravity. They told us it was operator error." "I'm sorry." "Are you?" Monica's eyes were hard. "Or are you just saying what you're supposed to say?" Sarah stood, instinct telling her to run. But something made her stop. "I am sorry," she said, and meant it. "I can't fix what happened to your brother, but I'm scared too, all the time, that I'll do something wrong and hurt someone, that just existing near people is dangerous." Monica stared at her for a long moment, then nodded once and walked away. That night, Dr. Hannah Park sat in her office reviewing data on her terminal. The Interspecies Integration Committee had sent another inquiry, concerns about student Sarah 1479's psychological profile. Questions about whether the university was taking appropriate precautions. Hannah pulled up the ambient stress charts from the past month. They showed something impossible. In every class Sarah attended, overall stress levels had decreased. Arguments de-escalated faster. Group work sessions stayed productive. The pattern was undeniable, and it centered on one row of desks. Hannah closed the report and made a note. Continue monitoring. Do not intervene yet. On Sunday night, Sarah stood in her small apartment, staring at her closet. The lecture was tomorrow. Mandatory attendance. No exceptions. She could risk deportation, could refuse and accept whatever consequences came, or she could go. Just this once. Sit near an exit like Ethan suggested. Keep the blocker at maximum. Leave at the first sign of trouble. Rules keep everyone safe, she'd been told. But safety wasn't the same as living. She chose an outfit that wouldn't draw attention and set 3 alarms for the morning. One more time, then she'd go back to avoiding everything. The echo field hummed quiet agreement, and Sarah tried not to think about what that meant. The main auditorium was built to hold 1,200 people. Today, it felt like twice that. Students packed the seats, lined the aisles, sat on the steps leading to the emergency exits. Camera drones hovered near the ceiling, streaming the event to classrooms across campus. Security officers stood at intervals, trying to look relaxed while their eyes tracked every movement. Sarah stood frozen in the entrance archway. This was a mistake. A catastrophic, irreversible mistake. Hey. Ethan appeared beside her, slightly out of breath. Sorry I'm late. Transit was a nightmare. He looked at the crowd, then at her pale face. Okay, yeah, this is a lot. Come on. He guided her along the wall toward a section near the side exit. Most of the seats were taken, but he found 2 spots in a row that people seemed to be avoiding, probably because of the support column blocking part of the view. Perfect. If you need to bail halfway through, Ethan said as they sat, I've got a whole performance prepared. You suddenly remember a gas leak in your apartment. Very urgent. I'll cover for you. Despite everything, Sarah almost smiled. A gas leak? I'll workshop it. The auditorium lights dimmed. Ambassador Telen, a dignified Varun with silver skin and too many joints in his fingers, took the stage. His voice carried through the speakers, measured and diplomatic. Sarah tried to focus on his words. Something about mutual understanding, cultural exchange, the importance of patience. But all she could feel was the crowd. 1,200 heartbeats. 1,200 sources of fear and excitement and boredom and anxiety, all bleeding into the air like heat. The echo field stirred, recognizing familiar prey. Her blocker pulsed twice. Warning mode. Near the back entrance, Jace Miller had positioned himself perfectly. Phone mounted on a small tripod, streaming to his 7,000 followers. He'd hyped this event all week. Mandatory alien assembly, packed house. What could go wrong? His viewers loved it. All right, everyone, he said into the camera, pitching his voice just loud enough to carry. Maximum capacity, humans and aliens sharing one space. Historic moment or disaster waiting to happen? Place your bets in the chat. Someone near him laughed nervously. Others pulled out their phones, filming their own reactions. On stage, Ambassador Telen was explaining something about non-verbal consent customs. His words were careful, rehearsed. Then a technical issue. The microphone shrieked feedback, a sharp metallic screech that made half the room flinch. Someone dropped the equipment case backstage. The bang echoed like a gunshot. A student near the front stood up quickly. Was that security issue at North Campus last week? Someone else muttered. I heard there was a threat. No, that was a false alarm. Are we sure? The energy in the room shifted. Subtle at first, just a change in breathing patterns, people sitting a little straighter, eyes moving toward the exits. Jace caught it immediately. "Oh man, you can feel the tension. This is wild." He leaned toward his camera. "So apparently there was some incident at another university last month. No one's confirmed what actually happened, but you know how these things go. People get nervous, and then—" The woman next to him stood up. "I'm not staying if there's a safety issue." "There's no issue," a security officer said, but his hand was on his radio. More people stood, not leaving, just positioning themselves near the aisles, just in case. The echo field woke up with the hunger of something that had been caged too long. Sarah felt it crash through her like a wave. Every spike of fear, every flutter of doubt, every person's barely contained anxiety rushing into her nervous system all at once. Her blocker burned hot against her skin, trying to contain what couldn't be contained. She was going to amplify it, going to take this room full of nervous energy and turn it into a stampede. People would run, people would fall, people would get hurt, and it would be her fault, again, always her fault. Ethan's hand closed over hers. She jumped. His palm was warm, solid, real. "Hey," he said quietly, angled so only she could hear. "You're shaking." She couldn't speak, could barely breathe. The field was pulling at her, demanding release, demanding to reflect every ounce of fear back at the crowd in a feedback loop that would only end in disaster. "Ethan," she managed, her voice breaking, I can't." "Can't what?" She turned to look at him, and he must have seen something in her eyes, because his expression shifted from concern to alarm. "I'm amplifying it," she whispered. "Everything they're feeling. I pull it in and send it back stronger. If I don't stop it—" Her hands were shaking now, the blocker flashing red behind her ear. "It's going to get worse. Much worse." In the rows ahead, someone shouted about needing air. Another person pushed past them, heading for the exit. The low buzz of anxiety was rising to a roar. Ethan looked at the crowd, looked at her, and made a decision that should have taken longer. He turned fully toward her, both hands now covering hers, grounding her with his weight. "Then use it on me." Sarah stared at him. "What?" "Whatever's happening, whatever you're pulling from the room." Ethan's voice was steady, but his eyes showed he understood this was dangerous. "Focus it on me instead." "You don't understand." Her whole body was shaking now. "I take what people feel and multiply it. If I channel this through you, you'll feel all of their fear, all of it, times 10. You could what? Panic? Pass out?" He squeezed her hands tighter. "I've lived through worse than feeling scared. Ethan, I've seen people get hurt because I made a wrong call." His voice dropped, urgent and raw. "I've watched a building burn because I missed something obvious. I've spent 2 years replaying every mistake on loop." He met her eyes. "What I won't do is sit here while you torture yourself trying to protect everyone alone." Around them, the auditorium was unraveling. Someone screamed about a locked exit. Security radios crackled. The ambassador's calm voice was drowned out by rising chaos. "I trust you," Ethan said. He closed his eyes like he was bracing for impact. "Now trust me back, just this once." The echo field was a living thing now, clawing at her control, demanding release. Sarah made a choice. She stopped fighting it. Instead, she did what every instinct, every rule, every trained response told her never to do. She opened herself fully to the field and aimed it at the one person who'd asked her to. The effect was immediate. The crowd's emotional storm, the tsunami of fear and confusion and barely controlled panic, rushed into her like water through a broken dam. She gasped, her fingers tightening around Ethan's until she was sure she'd break bones. But she didn't let go. The field pulled everything through her and slammed it into Ethan's nervous system. For 3 seconds that felt like drowning. He felt it all. The student near the front who'd lost a friend in an attack and saw threats everywhere. The woman who'd been crushed in a crowd once and never forgot the helplessness. The international student afraid that one wrong move would get them deported. Monica's grief for her brother. Jace's desperate need to matter to someone. Anyone. The security officer terrified he'd miss a real emergency. Sarah's bone-deep certainty that she was a weapon wearing a person's face. 1,200 people's worth of fear, compressed and amplified, poured through his body like electricity. He could have broken. Should have broken. Any rational person would have let go, would have pulled away, would have saved themselves. But Ethan had spent 2 years trying to fix things, and he was done with running. In the center of that emotional hurricane, he found something solid. A thought. 3 words, repeated like a mantra. Don't run. Breathe. Stay. He held on to those words with everything he had, not because they made the fear go away. They didn't. But because they were simple enough to be true, even when nothing else made sense. Don't run. He'd run before. It hadn't helped. Breathe. His body still knew how, even when his mind was screaming. Stay. Someone needed him to. That was enough. The echo field connected to him through Sarah's desperate focus felt that core of stubborn determination, and it did what it was built to do. It amplified it, sent it back out into the auditorium, multiplied 100-fold. Don't run. Breathe. Stay. The change rippled through the crowd like a wave moving backward. A man halfway to the exit stopped, hand on the door. He took a breath, stayed. The woman who'd been shouting about safety suddenly found herself just standing, breathing. The panic was still there, but it wasn't in control anymore. Students who'd been filming stopped, lowered their phones. They weren't sure why. They just didn't need to anymore. Monica, 3 rows ahead, felt the anxiety in her chest unclench. She sat back down, confused but calm. Even Jace, streaming to thousands of viewers, paused his commentary. The crowd wasn't giving him drama anymore. They were just listening. The ambassador's voice, steady and patient, filled the space where chaos had been seconds before. In the monitoring station outside, Dr. Hannah Park watched her screens flash impossible data. The stress indicators had spiked to critical, red across every metric. Then they'd plummeted. Not gradually. All at once. Like someone had found the off switch for a room full of panic. She pulled up the camera feeds, scanning for the source. Found 2 students near the side exit, hands clasped. The human's face was pale, sweating. The Illyri was crying silently. Neither of them had moved. In his seat, Ethan opened his eyes. His heart was hammering. His whole body felt like he'd sprinted a marathon, but he was laughing. Quiet, breathless, almost hysterical. "Did you?" he managed. "Did that just work?" Sierra was shaking, tears streaming down her face. "I don't. You felt it. All of it. How are you?" "Still here," he finished. "Turns out feeling scared isn't actually the worst thing." He was still holding her hands. Wasn't sure if he could let go yet. "We did that. Right? Together?" She nodded, unable to speak. "We," Sarah repeated, her voice breaking on the word. "If I pull alone, it's chaos. But with you holding it..." She looked at their joined hands like they were something miraculous and terrifying. It turned into calm. Around them, the auditorium had settled. People sat back down. The ambassador continued his speech. Security officers relaxed their stances, confused but relieved. No stampede, no injuries, no incident, just a room full of people who'd been on the edge and somehow stepped back. And in the last row, near the exit, 2 students who'd somehow turned a disaster into something else entirely. The emergency meeting happened at 8 the next morning. Dr. Hannah Park sat across from 3 members of the Interspecies Integration Committee, her tablet displaying data that shouldn't exist. "There was a critical stress event," Director Mills said, reviewing his own copy of the report. "Panic response initiated across multiple subjects. Protocol dictates immediate evaluation and potential removal of high-risk students. Except the event resolved," Hannah said carefully, "within 90 seconds. No injuries, no sustained trauma responses." "Resolved how?" Hannah pulled up the biometric overlays, stress hormones spiking across the auditorium, fear responses cascading. Then, in a pattern that made no sense, everything stabilizing, not slowly, instantly, centered on 2 students. Student Sarah's echo field activated, she said. There's no denying that. Her blocker logs show she went past maximum safe threshold. Then she should be recalled for containment. Let me finish. Hannah switched to the second data stream. Student Ethan Cole's biometrics during the same period. His fear response went through the roof. He should have entered fight or flight, should have exhibited extreme distress. And he didn't. His heart rate stayed elevated but controlled. His breathing remained measured, and his emotional signature showed something I've never seen in integration data. She highlighted a section. Active, conscious regulation. He was terrified, but he chose to stay calm, and somehow that choice propagated through the entire auditorium. Director Mills leaned back. You're suggesting an Illyri echo field responded to a human's emotional state? I'm suggesting, Hannah said slowly, that with a human anchor the echo field might not be a weapon. It might be a regulator. The room went very quiet. That's not how echo fields work, another committee member said. They amplify. Period. They amplify the dominant emotional signature in a group. Always have. Hannah pulled up historical data from Illyri medical studies. But those studies were done in groups of Illyri, who process emotion differently than humans. What if the field can lock onto a single human's emotional control and spread that, instead of the group's panic? You're proposing we test this. I'm proposing we don't destroy what might be the first successful integration of a dangerous ability into a beneficial tool. Hannah closed her tablet. Give me 30 days. Controlled environments, strict monitoring. If I'm wrong, you can deport her with full justification. They argued for 20 minutes. In the end, Hannah got her 30 days. Sarah sat in the campus coffee shop, hands wrapped around a cup she wasn't drinking when Ethan found her. Hey! He slid into the chair across from her. He looked like he hadn't slept. Dr. Park called me this morning. Said they want to run some tests. Something about your echo field thing being useful instead of dangerous. They want to see if I can do it again. Sarah's voice was flat. If yesterday wasn't a fluke. Was it? She finally looked at him. I don't know. I've spent 5 years trying not to use it. I don't know what happens when I do. Fair. Ethan ran a hand through his hair. Can I tell you something? She nodded. Before I came back to school, I worked at an auto repair shop. Best job I ever had. I was good at it, you know. Could diagnose problems just from sounds, fix things other people gave up on. He stared at his hands. Then I missed something. Fuel line issue I should have caught. Small thing, easy to overlook. What happened? Shop caught fire. My buddy Dave was inside. He got out, but he's got scars on his arms that won't fade. Ethan's jaw tightened. Wasn't malicious. Wasn't intentional. I just screwed up. And someone I cared about paid for it. Sarah's chest ached. That's why you avoid taking charge. Why you don't want anyone relying on you. Yeah. He met her eyes. So yesterday, when I told you to use the field on me, I was absolutely terrified. Not of feeling scared, of being wrong again, of making it worse. But you didn't run. Neither did you. He reached across the table, palm up. An offer, not a demand. I think we're both pretty scared of ourselves. Difference is yesterday we were scared together, and somehow that made it better. Sarah put her hand in his. The echo field stirred, gentle and curious. On my homeworld, she said quietly, there was a protest. I was in the wrong place at the wrong time. When the crowd got anxious, my field took that anxiety and fed it back to them, stronger. People ran, got hurt. A woman broke her arm. A man's heart gave out for 30 seconds before they revived him. How old were you? 14. Ethan's hand tightened around hers. You were a kid, in a scary situation. That wasn't your fault. The medical board disagreed. said I was a Category 3 risk, gave me the blocker and a rule book. She looked at their joined hands. Every rule was about staying away from people, never connecting, never trusting, because connection is what makes the field dangerous. Or, Ethan said carefully, connection is what makes it work right. You weren't connected to that crowd. You were scared and alone, and the field just grabbed whatever was closest. And yesterday? Yesterday you were connected to me, and I was trying really hard not to make everything worse. He smiled, exhausted. Turns out my one personality trait is stubbornness. Field must have liked that. Across the shop, Monica Reyes watched them from the pickup counter. She'd come here to study, hadn't expected to see them, hadn't expected to feel what she was feeling. She picked up her coffee and walked over before she could talk herself out of it. "Can I sit?" They both looked up, surprised. Sarah tensed. Ethan glanced between them, reading the history there. "Sure," he said. Monica sat, looked at Sarah directly. "I was there yesterday, in the auditorium. I felt it." Her voice was tight. The panic, then that weird calm that came out of nowhere. "That was you, wasn't it?" Sarah nodded slowly. "My brother died because alien technology failed. For 2 years I've blamed the tech, blamed the people who made it, blamed anyone who wasn't human for being here in the first place." Monica's hand shook. "But yesterday, alien whatever you have saved 1,200 people from a stampede, including me." "I'm sorry about your brother," Sarah said. "I can't change what happened to him." "I know." Monica stood. "Dr. Park called me too, said they might need witnesses, people who felt what happened. If they do, I'll tell them the truth. That I was about to run, and something made me stop and breathe instead." She left before either of them could respond. Ethan looked at Sierra. "So, 30-day trial. Think we can keep not panicking for a month?" "I think," Sierra said, the ghost of a smile on her face, "we might not have a choice." The echo field hummed agreement, warm and steady between them. The first week of testing felt like hope wearing a lab coat. Controlled environments, small groups, scenarios designed to induce mild stress while Sierra and Ethan sat together, hands linked, doing what had somehow worked in the auditorium. It worked every time, a debate about resource allocation that should have devolved into shouting. Everyone stayed civil, a surprise fire alarm that could have caused panic. People filed out calmly, checking on each other. Dr. Park's data showed the same impossible pattern. When the echo field activated with Ethan as the anchor, group stress levels didn't amplify. They regulated. "I'm calling it emotional grounding," Hannah said during a briefing. "The field locks onto the anchor's emotional signature and propagates it outward. As long as the anchor maintains control, the group stabilizes." "And if the anchor loses control?" a committee member asked. No one had a good answer for that. Week 2 started with confidence. The university scheduled a student assembly to discuss budget cuts that would affect alien scholarship programs. High emotions expected. Sierra and Ethan positioned in the third row, ready. Except Ethan's morning class ran late. A project presentation that couldn't be rescheduled. He texted, "Stuck in lab, 15 min behind. You okay waiting?" Sierra stared at the message. The assembly hall was filling up, angry signs, raised voices already starting. She could leave, should leave, but she'd spent 5 years leaving, and the echo field had been quiet lately, almost peaceful when Ethan was around. She texted back, "I'll be fine. It's just 15 minutes. It was not fine. The debate started civil, but budgets made people defensive. A human student argued that alien programs took resources from struggling locals. An alien student countered that they'd been promised support. Voices rose. Someone stood up. Someone else stood to face them. The field stirred, tasting tension. Sarah's blocker pulsed. Not critical yet, just awake. She tried what Ethan did, focused on staying calm, on breathing, on thinking, "Don't make it worse." The field felt her intention, but there was no connection, no anchor, just her, alone, trying to force control over something that had never obeyed rules. The argument escalated. Someone shoved. Security moved in. The energy in the room spiked. The field grabbed it. For 5 terrible seconds, Sarah felt the amplification start. Fear feeding fear, anger stoking anger. She clamped down hard, forcing the field to pull back into herself instead of spreading outward. It hurt like swallowing glass. The assembly didn't explode into chaos, but it came close. Security had to escort 3 students out. The dean canceled the rest of the discussion. Ethan arrived as people were filing out, saw Sarah sitting rigid in her seat, and knew immediately something had gone wrong. "Hey, I'm sorry. The professor wouldn't let us—" It almost happened again. Her voice was hollow. "Without you there, I couldn't control it. I tried, and it almost worked, but it was too close." But it didn't. This time, she stood, hands shaking. "What about next time? What if you're sick? What if there's an emergency and you can't be there? What if you just don't want to anymore? Sierra, I'm a bomb that only doesn't explode when you're holding the detonator." She finally looked at him and her eyes were devastated. "That's not partnership. That's just a different kind of containment." He reached for her. She stepped back. "You can't fix me, Ethan. I'm not a broken machine. I'm a person with a biological condition that makes me dangerous." "You're not dangerous." "I am." Her voice cracked. "I almost proved it today." She left before he could argue. The next 3 days were harder. Sarah attended classes but sat alone again, back in her corner by the window. The field stayed locked down, her blocker set to maximum. She felt numb and distant, like she was watching her life through glass. Ethan tried texting. She responded with single words. "Fine." "Okay. Busy." He tried waiting after class. She left through different doors. On the 4th day, Monica found him sitting on a bench outside the engineering building, staring at nothing. "She's leaving," Monica said without preamble. "Saw her in Dr. Park's office this morning, requesting transfer back to her homeworld." Ethan's stomach dropped. "Did she say why?" "Yes. Something about not wanting to be dependent. About it not being fair to you." Monica sat down beside him. "For what it's worth, I think she's scared. When my brother died, I wanted to quit every alien-related thing I was studying. Felt like if I just avoided it all, I'd be safe." "Were you?" "Safe? Sure. Also miserable." She glanced at him. "You going to let her go?" "It's not about letting her. She's right. If I'm the only thing standing between her and disaster, that's not healthy for either of us." "Is that what you think you are?" Ethan didn't answer. Monica stood. "There's a difference between being someone's crutch and being someone's choice. Figure out which one you are before she gets on that transport." That night, Sayura packed her few belongings. The university had approved her transfer. Dr. Park had argued against it, but ultimately, students had the right to leave. 48 hours, and she'd be back on her homeworld. Back to containment therapy, medication, small rooms with no windows, back to being safe. Her tablet buzzed. A message from Dr. Park. "Reviewed all the data from your time here. The echo field showed decreased volatility in every session where you chose to engage, not when you were forced. Even the assembly where Ethan was late, you pulled it back. That's control. That's growth. Worth noting." Sayera deleted the message and went back to packing. The echo field, for the first time in weeks, felt cold and silent, like it knew she was giving up. Ethan found Dr. Park in her office at midnight, still reviewing data. "Student Cole, you're aware office hours ended 6 hours ago?" "Yeah, sorry." He stood in the doorway, looking lost. "I need to understand something about the echo field, about what we've been doing." Hannah gestured to a chair. "I'm listening." "Is she right? Is she only stable when I'm there because she needs me?" He sat forward, hands clasped tight. Because if that's true, if I'm just keeping her functional, then she should leave. That's not living. That's just a different cage. Interesting question. Hannah pulled up her data streams. Let me show you something. She displayed the biometric data from every test they'd run. Stress levels, field activity, emotional regulation patterns. Here, the auditorium. High stress, field activation, successful regulation. She highlighted a section. What do you see? Field stabilized when I focused on staying calm. Now, look at this. She pulled up the assembly data, the one where he'd been late. Field activated, began amplification, then pulled back. Sarah managed that alone. But she said it almost failed. Almost. Hannah zoomed in on the timing. She held it for 5 minutes. That's longer than any previous solo attempt. The field is learning, Mr. Cole. Or she is. Probably both. So she doesn't need me. Need? No. Hannah switched to a different view. But look at this. The sessions where you were present, but she chose to activate the field, versus sessions where she felt obligated. Voluntary activation shows 40% better regulation and lower stress on both of you. Ethan stared at the data. Because she wanted to, not because she had to. Humans are very good at knowing the difference between obligation and choice, Hannah said. Apparently echo fields are too. She closed the display. She doesn't need you to function. She functions better with you because you've chosen to be there. That's not dependency. That's partnership. She's leaving in 2 days. I know, and I can't stop her. Neither can you. Hannah met his eyes. But you can tell her why you stayed. Not because you had to. Because you wanted to. Ethan found Sarah in the library. Same corner desk where they'd had coffee weeks ago. She was staring at a blank document, cursor blinking. He sat down across from her without asking. You're avoiding me, he said. You noticed. Kind of hard not to. You're very good at it. She finally looked at him. Her eyes were red-rimmed. Ethan, I can't do this. I can't be the reason you have to drop everything and run to assemblies. I can't make you responsible for whether I hurt people. Good thing that's not what I'm doing then. What? I'm not there because you need me. I'm there because I choose to be. He leaned forward. Dr. Park showed me the data. You're getting better at controlling the field. The assembly proved that. You pulled it back alone. Was it scary? Yeah. But you did it. Barely. Barely is still doing it. He ran his hand through his hair, frustrated. Look, for 2 years I've been trying to be invisible, trying not to matter to anyone because I was scared of messing up again. Then you came along and suddenly I had a reason to try. Not because you forced me to, because I wanted to. Sarah's hands tightened on the edge of the table. And when you realize the cost of that choice? I already know the cost. Felt it in the auditorium, remember? 1,200 people's worth of fear all at once. He smiled slightly. Still here. That's not fair to you. Neither is you deciding what's fair for me. His voice softened. You keep saying you don't want to be my responsibility. Fine. You're not. But you are my choice. And that matters. She was crying now. Silent tears tracking down her face. I'm so tired of being scared, she whispered. Yeah, me too. He held out his hand, not demanding, just offering. She looked at it for a long time. Then she put her hand in his, and the echo field hummed to life. Not panicked, not desperate, just present, connected. Okay, she said. What do we do? Dr. Park got us 30 days. We've used 20. We have 10 left to prove the field can work as a tool, not just a weapon. Ethan squeezed her hand. What if we did a real demonstration? Not controlled, public. Show everyone that this can work when we choose it together. That's insane. Probably. He grinned. But so was sitting next to the scary alien girl on day 1. Worked out pretty well. Despite everything, Sarah laughed. It sounded rusty, but real. If we do this, she said, and it fails, then we fail together, and we figure out what comes next together. He stood, pulling her up with him. But we don't run. Not anymore. The next morning, they met with Dr. Park and proposed their plan. A public demonstration, open campus event, deliberate stress scenario. Sarah and Ethan at the center, using the echo field to regulate instead of amplify. Hannah stared at them like they'd suggested juggling live grenades. You want to intentionally create a high-stress situation and hope the field works? Not hope, Sarah said, her voice stronger than it had been in days. Prove. If we can manage it when everyone's watching, when there's pressure and doubt and fear, then we prove it's real. And if you can't? Then I leave, Sarah said simply. And you have definitive proof that the field is too dangerous for integration. Either way, we get answers. Hannah was quiet for a long moment, then she pulled up her calendar. 3 days from now, Central Quad. We'll organize a town hall about the integration program. Real topic, real emotions, real stakes. I'll have medical staff on standby. She looked at both of them. This is your idea, your choice. I'm just giving you the space to try. Thank you, Ethan said. Don't thank me yet. Hannah's expression was serious. If this fails, it won't just affect you two. It'll affect every alien student trying to build a life here. I know, Sarah said. That's why it has to work. Outside the office, Ethan bumped her shoulder gently. So, 3 days to not panic in front of the entire campus. Easy. Absolutely terrifying, Sarah agreed. Yeah, but we're terrified together. That seems to be our thing. She smiled, and for the first time in days, the echo field felt warm instead of heavy. Ready instead of afraid. The Central Quad could hold 1,500 people if they packed in tight. Today, they packed in tight. Students, faculty, local media, concerned citizens, everyone had an opinion about the integration program, and they'd all shown up to share it. The university had set up a podium, microphones, a screen for video testimony. Official, public, high stakes. Sarah and Ethan sat on a bench near the center, deliberately visible. Dr. Park had briefed them 3 times. Medical staff positioned at 4 corners. Security everywhere but trying not to look intimidating. This is a spectacularly bad idea, Ethan muttered. Agreed. Sarah's hands were shaking. She'd turned her blocker down to minimum. If the field was going to work, it needed room to breathe. The town hall started civil. Dean Martinez welcomed everyone, outlined the agenda. 3 speakers for, 3 speakers against, then open forum. The first speaker was a professor arguing for expanded integration. Thoughtful, data-driven. The second was a parent whose daughter had thrived in mixed classes. Personal, hopeful. The third was a former integration coordinator from another university, talking about successful protocols. Then came the opposition. A student whose job application was rejected, convinced an alien had taken the position. Raw, angry. A shop owner dealing with decreased business near the alien housing complex. Economic anxiety wrapped in careful language. A man who'd lost someone in the incident 3 years ago, the one everyone still whispered about. His pain was real and unfiltered. The quad's energy shifted. Fear, resentment, grief, all valid, all understandable, all combustible when packed together. The echo field stirred. Sarah felt it wake up like a muscle unclenching. The blocker pulsed once, a reminder it was there if she needed it. She didn't activate it. Not yet. The forum opened for questions. Hands shot up. Voices overlapped. The dean tried to maintain order, but emotions were too high. Someone shouted about safety. Someone else shouted back about discrimination. Security took a step forward. Now? Ethan asked quietly. Now, Sarah confirmed. She took his hand. No hesitation this time. Just connection. The field opened like a door she'd been holding shut. Every spike of anger, every thread of fear, every person's complicated mess of feelings rushed toward her. The bench beneath them, the ground under their feet, all of it faded except the sensation of too much, too fast, too sharp. Ethan felt it slam into him a heartbeat later. The parents' terror that their child would be hurt. The students' rage at a system that felt rigged. The shop owner's desperation to survive. The grieving man's conviction that none of this was worth the cost. It was huge, overwhelming, real. Ethan's first instinct was to let go. His body screamed at him to run, to protect himself, to stop touching the source of all this pain. He held on tighter, found his center, that same stubborn core that had kept him steady in the auditorium. Don't run. Breathe. Listen. Listen. That was new. Not just stay, but listen to what people were actually feeling beneath the anger. The field felt the shift in his intention. In the quad, something changed. People who'd been shouting paused, not silenced, not controlled, just given space to breathe. The grieving man, halfway through an accusation, stopped, took a breath. His anger didn't disappear, but it wasn't the only thing he felt anymore. The student with the job complaint sat down, still frustrated, but no longer vibrating with rage. Even the most hostile voices found themselves turning questions instead of accusations. It was working. Then someone threw a rock. Not large, not aimed at anyone in particular, but it cracked against the podium with a sound that echoed like a gunshot. "This is exactly what I'm talking about!" someone screamed. "Violence! They bring violence!" It didn't matter that the thrower was human. The word violence cut through the fragile calm like a blade. The crowd surged, not attacking, just moving, reacting, everyone's fear spiking at once. The field grabbed it. Sarah gasped, her grip on Ethan's hand turning desperate. This was bigger than the auditorium, more chaotic, more real. The amplification started, fear feeding into more fear. Someone screamed. Security rushed forward. The crowd pressed in all directions at once. Ethan felt it trying to break him. Every survival instinct he had begged him to let go, to save himself, to stop being the anchor for a storm this big. His hand started to slip. Sierra felt it, turned to look at him. "You can stop," she said, even as tears streamed down her face. "Ethan, you can let go. You don't have to. I know." His voice was shaking, every muscle in his body was screaming, but he looked at her, at the crowd, at the disaster they were preventing together. He tightened his grip until his knuckles went white. "I still trust you." 4 words. Impossibly simple. Completely true. The field felt it. Felt him choose again to stay. This time the response was instant. The panic spreading through the crowd hit Ethan's unshakable decision to trust and shattered against it like water against stone. Don't run, because running won't fix this. Breathe, because you still can. Listen, because fear doesn't mean wrong. Trust, because someone needs you too. The field took those 4 intentions and sent them back out, multiplied across 1,500 people. The crowd stopped moving, stopped shouting, just stopped and breathed. Security reached the rock thrower, a young man already crying, apologizing, saying he didn't mean to, he was just scared. The dean's voice, carefully calm, suggested a 10-minute break. People sat down, on benches, on the grass, on the ground, still angry, still scared, still holding all their complicated feelings, but not acting on them. Not yet. Monica Reyes, standing near the edge of the quad, felt tears on her face and didn't remember starting to cry. She pushed through the crowd until she reached Sierra and Ethan. Without a word, she wrapped her arms around Sierra. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you for not giving up." Jace Miller, camera still running, captured the moment. Later, he'd delete his usual commentary and post it raw. No editing, no spin, just the truth of what he'd witnessed. Dr. Park, watching from the medical station, saw her stress monitors do the impossible thing again, critical spike, then cascade stabilization, and in the center of it all, two students holding hands, like they were the only solid thing in a world that wouldn't stop shaking. When the break ended, the town hall continued, still tense, still difficult, but manageable. No one got hurt. No one panicked. The committee announced their decision 3 hours later. The integration program would continue, with new protocols, including voluntary emotional regulation support for high-stress events. Sayara's transfer request was officially denied, not because she was forced to stay, because she was needed, because she chose to stay. 6 weeks later, the lecture hall looked the same as it always had, except the back row by the window wasn't empty anymore. Sayara arrived early, as always, but now 3 other students were already there. A human girl with test anxiety who'd discovered that sitting near Sayara helped her breathe through exam panic. An alien from Chorus 6 who'd been overwhelmed by Earth's sensory chaos. A guy who'd lost his sister and couldn't handle crowds anymore. They didn't sit directly next to her, just close enough to feel the calm. Ethan showed up exactly 2 minutes before class started, dropped into his usual seat and handed Sayara a coffee. "You remembered the cinnamon," she said, surprised. "I remember lots of things." He opened his battered notebook. "Like how you said Illyri coffee traditions involve spices. Figured I'd experiment." The professor launched into a lecture about trust building across cultural divides. Ironic, considering. Halfway through, a heated debate broke out about resource allocation. Voices rose. Someone stood up, gesturing sharply. The usual tension spike. Then, almost imperceptibly, it settled. Not suppressed, just managed. People still disagreed, but they stayed in their seats, used words instead of volume. The professor paused, noticing but not commenting. In the back row, Ethan and Sayara sat with their fingers barely touching on the armrest between them. The echo field hummed, active but gentle, a background presence that caught the sharp edges of emotion and softened them just enough. After class, Dr. Park caught them in the hallway. The integration committee wants to expand the program. 3 other universities have requested information about emotional regulation protocols. She looked tired but satisfied. "They're calling you two the proof of concept." "Sounds official," Ethan said. "It is, which means paperwork, evaluations, probably some speaking engagements." Hannah smiled slightly. "Also means Sarah's student visa is being converted to a research fellowship. Congratulations. You're stuck with us." Sarah felt something unfold in her chest. Not the field. Something quieter. Relief, maybe. Or permission to stop waiting for everything to fall apart. "Thank you," she said, "for believing this could work." "I didn't believe it could work," Hannah admitted. "I hoped. There's a difference." She glanced between them. "The work you two are doing, it's not just about the field. It's about showing people that our differences don't have to be weapons. They can be bridges, if we're brave enough to try." She left them in the hallway. Monica found them a few minutes later, practically bouncing. "Okay, so I joined Dr. Park's research team. I'm studying human-alien emotional compatibility in crisis situations." She was grinning. "Never thought I'd say this, but working with alien tech might actually be my future." "Who knew?" "That's amazing," Sarah said. "Yeah, thanks for not giving up on people like me." Monica's expression softened. "I was so angry for so long. Felt easier than being sad. But you two showed me that being scared doesn't mean being enemies." She headed to her next class, leaving them alone again. Jace's voice echoed from a nearby courtyard. They found him recording, but his usual performance energy was different. More genuine. "So here's the thing about viral moments," he was saying to his camera. "I spent months trying to manufacture drama because I thought that's what people wanted. Turns out, what they actually want is honesty. This campus has humans and aliens figuring out how to live together. It's messy, it's complicated, and it's real. That's the story." His channel had tripled in subscribers since he'd posted the unedited town hall footage. End of semester arrived with the usual chaos of final projects and exams. Ethan sat in his usual spot, trying to reassemble a drone he'd taken apart for an engineering presentation. Parts spread across the desk, instructions ignored. Sarah arrived, set down her bag, and immediately started organizing his chaos into something resembling order. "You know you're supposed to keep track of the screws, right? I had a system. Your system was pile everything in the corner and hope." He grinned. "It's worked so far." They fell into comfortable silence, working on their separate projects in the same space. The classroom filled up around them, but the back row maintained its peculiar calm. Outside the window, Denver stretched toward distant mountains. Somewhere in the city, other aliens were attending other classes, building other lives. Some thriving, some struggling, all trying. "When I first came here," Sarah said quietly, not looking up from her tablet, "I avoided every human I saw. Thought distance would keep everyone safe." "When I first came here," Ethan replied, "I avoided everyone. Thought invisibility would keep me from messing up again. We were both wrong." "Yeah." He set down his wrench, but wrong in a way that turned out okay. She finally looked at him. "Next semester, if you want to sit somewhere else with people who don't require emotional regulation support." "Sierra, I just want you to know you don't have to." "Next semester," he interrupted gently, "I'm sitting right here, same spot, same time, because I choose to. Not because you need me to. Because I want to." Her eyes misted. "Even knowing what it costs. Especially knowing what it costs." He reached for her hand. "Fear doesn't go away just because we face it, but we can decide it's worth feeling anyway." The echo field pulsed between them, not amplifying, not regulating, just present. A third presence in a partnership that had started with an empty chair and a guy who sat down without asking permission. Somewhere across campus, the integration committee was drafting new policies. Other universities were watching. The news had picked up the story, but in that moment, in that classroom, it was just two people who'd learned that trust didn't mean not being afraid. It meant choosing someone anyway. On the wall outside the classroom, a new plaque had been installed. Small, easy to miss if you weren't looking, in recognition of the students who proved that our greatest differences can become our greatest strengths, when we choose connection over fear. Below it, a photo. Candid, taken during the town hall, two students holding hands in the center of a crowd, not trying to control the chaos, just refusing to let go. Years later, when the first interspecies emotional response teams were founded, when echo field abilities were understood not as weapons but as tools for healing, when humans and Illyri worked side by side in crisis situations across a dozen worlds, people would ask how it started. The answer was simple. A guy sat down next to an anxious alien in a classroom. He didn't know she'd avoided every other human on campus, didn't know she was terrified of the power she carried, didn't know that sitting beside her would change everything. He just knew the seat was empty, and he needed somewhere quiet. Sometimes the most revolutionary act is just showing up, and refusing to leave when it gets hard. That's what humans do. They sit beside the people everyone else avoids. They hold on when every instinct screams to run. They choose trust even when fear makes perfect sense. Not because it's easy, because it's worth it. And sometimes that stubborn, illogical, beautiful choice to trust is exactly what the universe needs. Even when the universe is just a classroom, 2 desks, and a girl who's finally stopped running. In the end, Sarah and Ethan didn't save a campus, or a program, or a fragile treaty between species. They saved something far smaller and far more difficult, the part of themselves that still believed connection was safer than fear. Maybe that's the real human superpower. Not strength, not courage, not emotional stability. Definitely not that. But the stubborn decision to stand still when running would be easier. And maybe that's the lesson hidden beneath the chaos. That no species, no matter how many limbs or emotional fields it has, survives by isolation. We survive by choosing each other, loudly, clumsily, imperfectly, again and again. But that's just one story. Now ask yourself, what would change in your life if you stopped running from the people who scare you because they matter? Where do we draw the line between responsibility and connection? And what happens when that line moves? And in your world, who sits in the empty chair beside you? And what would happen if you finally let them stay? If you made it to the end of this roller coaster of feelings plus space diplomacy, TME, write the word Anchor in the comments, because that's what this story was really about, being someone's steady point in a world that won't stop shaking. Tell me where you're watching from, city, planet, dimension. We don't judge. Hit subscribe if you want more human chaos meets alien feeling stories. Drop a like, hype the video, share it with someone who needs a reminder that trust is weird and beautiful, and check the next video in the end screen card before the algorithm remembers you still owe it money.